All right, hello everyone. Welcome to the Chicago International Film Festival virtual Q&A series, I guess you could call it. My name is Sam Flancher. I'm a programmer for Chicago International Film Festival, and we're delighted to have Josephine Decker, director of Shirley, joining us today.
Hi, thank you so much, Sam. Thanks for having me. I'm really grateful to be here and grateful to get to talk about the film with you guys.
Of course, so I want to start just at the sort of genesis of the film. Can you talk a little bit about how you came to the project, and then also maybe talk a little bit about any relationship you had to the work of Shirley Jackson, sort of before the film got started?
Yeah, sure. So I actually the film was a script already that existed that I just got to pitch on and do my best to turn into a movie. So the film already was like there was already a bubble that had, the magic Shirley bubble had been made. Sarah Gubbins, our writer, had fallen in love with the idea of turning Shirley, the novel, which is a fictional novel that's inspired by Shirley Jackson. So it's a novel by Susan Scarf Merrill. Sarah wrote a screenplay based on that, and then I got to make the movie. So it was many layers of doing, and I was just super interested in, Shirley's writing is so stunning. She just has this kind of dreamy way of moving you from reality into a dream, and it's like you go from a very objective reality into a very subjective one, and in a way that you almost can't tell that that's happening. So I was super excited about the idea of trying to do something like that in a film. And it's something that I already had been kind of experimenting with. So to get to do something kind of an ode to Shirley that hopefully felt like a Shirley Jackson short story, that was what an exciting project to get to be invited to be part of.
Yeah, and did you like and know Shirley Jackson's work leading up to it? Were you a big fan, or I guess what relationship did you have to that work?
Yeah, I had just read We Have Always Lived in the Castle. I had actually seen, ironically, I found the book at the airport. I think they were re-releasing a lot. It was like the centennial of her birth. And so I think this was in maybe 2017. And I fell in love with that book and was like, my God, this is like what she's doing in her writing is so much what I've been trying to do in cinema. And then maybe 3 weeks later, after I finished the book and was committed to reading everything Shirley had written, this screenplay came to me, and I was invited to pitch on it. And it was just such exciting timing. And I was a literature major in college. So to get to steep in a world of an amazing female writer was definitely I was excited. I was very excited to go forward with that. And then what was the second half of your question? I think you asked another question as well.
You answered it pretty well.
Okay, gotcha. Great, cool.
So you mentioned the layering. So it's the real life, and then the novelization of the real life, and then the script of the novelization of the real life. So while you're directing a film like this, do you feel, is that a constraining sort of element? Or do you feel beholden to do right by any of these, like the real life or the novel or the script, or is that not something you think about while you're?
Yeah, we knew, Sarah was so clear early on that we were going to do, that this was going to be a fictional account, and that we were not adapting her biography, we were adapting a fictional novel. And Sarah already from that fictional novel took a lot more steps forward towards making it even more removed from Shirley's real life. And the thing that we were really just clear that we wanted to adhere to more than anything was the feeling of Shirley's work, that we wanted to put her into a story that it felt like she could have written herself. And so the thing that we were trying to be loyal to was her style and her, this kind of melting between objectivity and subjectivity, these duality of two strong female characters who were both two sides of a whole kind of. A lot of Shirley's work involves a sort of one woman who has her shit really figured out and is good at baking and at making men feel special. And the other one is a misanthropic kind of comedic spirit who is really brilliant, but is a little bit maybe more insecure, has a harder time connecting with other people. And so often in like in many of Shirley's novels, there are these kind of two female characters, and her biographer writes about how maybe there are two sides of the same mind, which is really Shirley's mind. Shirley was a writer, the breadwinner of her household, but she was also in an abusive marriage, and she was also a terrific mother, taking care of her. These like her stories about her kids were actually some of her bestsellers. She had these wonderfully comedic stories about her children, and I really recommend the book Life Among the Savages to anyone. It's just these stories that you can't make up about the things that your children do. And I think she was a refresh voice in that way at the time, talking about motherhood and not being a perfect mother, but being yourself and imperfect. And the kids live, so yeah, she has so many sides. And yes, I've now completely forgotten what the original question was. So I was like, wait, what was the original? Let's see, what was the original question?
It was about sort of the different layers of sort of
who
in the real life.
Oh yes, the novel in the real life. Yeah.
Well, like
yeah. Well,
like any kind of constraint. It actually sounds like it was maybe a bit freeing to like know that it was a fictionalized account.
Yeah, exactly. Definitely liberating, and felt really nice to get to be inspired by real life. But then let it go, like let take so much in. It's so rare that you get to do that much research for a project like that. There's so much that exists that can inform your world, and then you get to go make a fictional world and know that is actually, you're not having to be loyal to a real experience. Yeah.
So you mentioned her like tumultuous real life relationship with her husband.
Yeah.
I think one of the great strengths of the film is that relationship feels so core to the film.
Yeah.
And as I was watching it, there's this kind of lived-in quality to it, I think. But despite the fact that it's this extremely violent and antagonistic, but also extremely loving relationship, can you talk about like making that kind of violence or like that outburst feel like it's like routine for these people and like building that relationship?
Yeah. By the way, maybe it's time to mention that I have lost Sam in the pile of, I have like 7,000 tabs open in my, and I went to look at something else and I cannot find him in my tabs. So I'm listening to your voice and I cannot see your face. And I have spent, I've been subtly trying to hunt for you through but I'm scared to close. Like when you have like 47 tabs open, I'm like, what if he's on one of these tabs? And I don't think this thing doesn't seem to say recording the way that maybe other things do. Anyway, so point is, I apologize for not making terrific eye contact. Stanley and Shirley, my God, they are so fascinating. I mean, Sarah wrote, I think this was one of her favorite things. It's clear in the movie, I think, that she enjoyed the shit out of writing their dialogue because it's so funny and Sarah is so smart. So it's just, I think she had a blast going to like academia, misanthropic academia speak. And so they were just great on the page already, and their real life personalities are so fascinating too. And they had such a strange, the part about the other kind of like lovers, like Stanley would write home to Shirley and say, and be like, he would have these affairs. The rule was that he couldn't have an affair within 100 miles, but if he would go on a trip, he could have an affair. And then he would write home and tell her like in detail everything that happened. Super intense. And it's just, ugh. I shouldn't say but I don't know that I think polyamory is amazing. And I think for some people it really works. I don't know that for Shirley it was like the healthiest, most balanced relationship. And then in our film, obviously that's something that she's kind of grappling with, is this agreement that they've made. And then her kind of wrestling with how she deals with that. And then obviously that Rose is also dealing with the same problem. So, that's, but what a dynamic relationship. And also he was her big critic. Like in real life, Shirley really relied on Stanley's feedback. And I think they both thrived from that relationship, that Stanley gave such incredible editorial notes, and she relied on those, and he loved being like the first reader of her work. And I think it makes the kind of choice and the loyalty at the end of the film, I think, really sing home in a way. It's not the ending that you usually see for a movie like this. And I think that makes it feel in a way more real.
Yeah. Can you talk about working with Elizabeth Moss and Michael Stuhlbarg to build their dynamic and relationship, especially since it being like based on reality but a fictionalized account?
They had, oh my gosh, what incredible actors. Yeah, that I'm glad you asked, because I was meaning to talk about that too. They filled out those roles. I mean, they did so much of their own homework to research Shirley and Stanley, and then they really got inside of their those heads, I guess you could say. We read through the script a bunch at the beginning. We did some weird acting exercises, which are up my alley. I don't know if they're up anyone else's alleys, but that are more inspired by viewpoints. I went to what I always call it clown school, but it's actually a physical theater school. Pig Iron Theater Company, which is based in Philadelphia, has these incredible programs. So I had taken some classes there and was really interested in these movement-oriented physical workshoppings towards character. So it's sort of inspired by viewpoints. So we did some workshopping in that way, but a lot of it was discovery on set. And I think we didn't have a ton of rehearsal in advance. So in the mornings of when we were shooting, we would just try to really sink into those scenes. And honestly, the Shirley Stanley scenes were, in a weird way, some of the easiest for me, because they're such great actors and they have such strong instincts, and they've done this so much. I mean, so the rehearsal, we would take our time. We really would try to take our time to get it right. But they just would bounce ideas off each other. We would start the rehearsal process and they'd be like, what about you being here? And give me this harder, or like, this will give me something to react against, or, maybe you can walk around here at this time. And then I would sort of just try to give feedback and help them shape the scenes. But they were so strong. And I think, and it was also encouraging them, because Shirley and Stanley can read as such like big characters. And I think something I noticed right away was how we did thank you, Paul, our casting director, but I think we did a good job casting. So they actually weren't, they didn't have to, even though these characters are, I think, especially for Lizzie, this was a big departure from the kind of world of characters that she's usually portrayed. This, in some ways, it was someone that she could feel very close to. And so it was sort of allowing, supporting and encouraging both of them to not feel like they had to go too far outside of themselves to find the character, but that like there was something very much akin, like between Stanley and the actual Michael. Obviously, I think Michael was a much better human being than the Stanley, the fictional Stanley that we're portraying in the movie. But that they could go for those interior instincts, so that the characters could be very subtle and nuanced and tight. So yeah, that was some of the thinking, I guess, in terms of working with them. But it was really trusting them, because when you have terrific actors like that, it's almost like you just try not to mess them up.
Yeah, I think particularly that Stanley performance is just, you uncorked a really good one from Michael Stuhlbarg.
Oh yeah, I love
the rangy actor, and he pitches up to this crazy degree, but it doesn't feel ridiculous at any point. So.
Yeah. He's a special actor. He really, wow, he can do like anything. It's incredible.
I want to ask, you mentioned improvisation on the set with the actors. The visual style is so striking, close-ups and sort of a little dreamy and fragmented. Is that something that also comes from improvisation on the set, or is there more dogmatic, or how do you approach sort of the visuals in the film?
The visuals, we, I think so. The cinematographer Sturla Grovlin, I think I had all these intentions of shooting a much more like Hitchcock-looking movie that was going to be very like wide lockdown shots, and of course, that's not really me at all. So, and I chose a cinematographer who I loved for his handheld work. I'd seen this great, he made a film called Heartstone, which is so beautiful. It takes place in Iceland. Oh my God. Oh my God. He's just so in tune. It's about these two young boys.
You
and
showed it actually at the Chicago Film
You
Festival.
showed it. Oh yeah. So you've seen it. Have you seen it?
I haven't seen it.
Oh, I highly recommend it. It's just tender and beautiful, and so I saw that and I was like, oh my God, I have to work with him. What an intuitive, thoughtful creator. And then when we were, working on Shirley, as much as we were like, we'll do a dolly shot and we'll do this, when we got into actually shooting, the stuff that felt, I think, the most alive to both of us was the handheld, and that's kind of more of my background as well. But the visual style, I think the other thing about choosing handheld is we were working a lot in small spaces. That we're mostly working in a house, and the house we chose was not super huge. It was like a normal sized house. So you can just get really stuck and be kind of like, you can really limit your blocking if you have a bunch of equipment in the middle of a room, and you're forcing the actors to be either to have to cross a dolly track and so I tend to really prioritize performance in my films. I really want to me, the performance is the most important thing. Like that, if you have that, you have your movie. And I think we chose a visual style that would allow us to prioritize that and to allow the actors the most flexibility in the room, and to allow the camera the most flexibility to be with the actors and to move between them in a way that was organic and felt like intimate and hopefully like visceral and connected and present, I guess you could say. But we did have a lot of different camera techniques that we were trying. So we had sort of different styles for different sections of the film. We had we had one style called creature, which was like, it was like a baby, like the idea of the camera work there. It was for these kind of dreamier moments when like Rose and Shirley are meeting, like the midnight kitchen, we called it the midnight kitchen scene, where Rose comes downstairs in the middle of the night and Shirley's in the kitchen, and they sort of have a toast. And it's sort of the first time that they kind of come together really in the movie. And for that, so the creature idea was that the camera is a baby and it has to live close to the body. Like you could almost hold it, or if it wants to go to the other person, it has to like crawl on actual structure. It can't just pan. It has to like go along a table or along the refrigerator or something to get to the other body. And then we had our own visual style for the town, because the town, in Shirley's stories, the town is always this very like ominous kind of superficial fake place where people say one thing to your face and then like go away and whatever, plot your murder behind your back, kind of literally actually in some of her stories. But so we wanted a feeling of making the town feel like the way her stories make the town feel. So we did do a locked down kind of fake-ish feeling vibe for the town work. So and for a lot of that stuff outside the house, when Rose runs an errand, that you sort of see the town there. Yeah. And it might be time, speaking of the town and Rose running an errand, we have to also say like how incredible Odessa Young, our lead actress, who really she kind of breathes the eye of the film. Like we're experiencing these people through her, and I just think she's an incredible performer and mature beyond her years. It was just exciting to get to work with her and sort of like see the wilderness around her through those like really that open-hearted performance.
Yeah, and her instinct seems so good. That transition, her sort of very subtle, slow transition into becoming more, I guess, like Shirley, or her, I guess, I don't know if you want to call it liberation or a metamorphosis, or, but it's very well tuned.
Oh, that's exciting. Yeah, she is. What a great performer, and grateful. Thank you for saying that. I think it was an exciting collaboration across many departments. obviously in most importantly in her performance. Yeah.
Yeah, there's even that shot of her at the end of the film in the car. She even like looks exactly like Elizabeth Moss's Shirley Jackson.
Oh wow, that's exciting. Yeah. It's a pretty cool transformation. Oh, what a blessing. Odessa and Lizzie and Michael and Logan. Wow. I just, couldn't had to pinch myself that we got such a terrific cast. Like you just don't, that's a real gift. Yeah.
We have a couple questions from the audience, and you mentioned sort of working in the house and it being kind of a cramped space. We have a question from Laura that she asks, what was the set experience like? Did you basically get to live in that beautiful house?
I know. I kind of want. We talked about should we buy this house? I think it's for sale actually now. So much of it was shot in that house, it was almost weird when we left the house. We were like, whoa, there's a whole other movie that we have to shoot. And we got so used to shooting in there, and there's a certain vibe that we were going for visually. And I think there's everything started to really click. I think when you're in a place for a long time, you get a certain rhythm. So yeah, I think that's, yeah, but we were living in it in a certain way for sure. I mean, we also, oh my God, there were so many things that I just remember the bathtub. So the bathtub, Shirley's supposed to have this big vision in the bathtub in the house, and they had tested, there was not actually a bathtub in that room, that we had put that bathtub in that room. And then we had to fill it with a garden hose. And then they were going to heat it with this water heater. And they had tested it already the day before. We get in there, they fill it with a garden hose, and then the heater doesn't work, and it's freezing. And it's you can't, you can't exactly perform the scene in a frozen, it's freezing water. And so they couldn't, and because the heater wasn't working, they were just running teapots that were this big, up and down the stairs to fill up the bath. And it was, we were 2.5 hours behind to start shooting that scene because of that. And that was a big bummer. But I think we got it. I think it worked out okay. Why am I telling the story? Oh, because of the house. Because then I think that ultimately they filled it up so much because they were trying to balance the cold water and the hot water, and they couldn't get the cold water out fast enough. And so then we had to, the water overflowed a little bit in the house. And so I don't know, I felt really bad. I was like, oh my God, we're destroying this house. Anyway, long story. I don't know how interesting that one was, but yeah.
We have another question from a YouTube commenter. Did you find adapting the book into the film different from running it by yourself? So could you talk about the differences between directing your own work and directing, I guess, someone else's script?
Oh yeah. And I just to add addendum to the last question, I should also shout out to Sue Chan, our incredible production designer, who did such a great job on that house and on all of our sets. She hired such a talented crew, and we were really lucky to work with them. Doing the script. Okay, so it was really different. I think when I'm writing a script for myself, I see the images, and what I write on paper is sort of an excuse to get the image that I have in my head. Very different to work from someone else's writing, and especially something that's very dialogue driven. So I think that's why I was wanting to be so collaborative with the actors. I wanted to sort of see it on its feet to really know how to sculpt it and put it into the visual language of the camera. And then there was obviously aspects of the script that are super visual. So I think those things, I had a strong idea ahead of time. But yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anything. Yeah, it's like one of those big learning experiences. And I feel like I learned so much from working with Sarah, who's just a terrific collaborator and so generous of spirit, and always open, always a yes and kind of a person, which I was so grateful for, especially being on a bigger project. You know, yeah, it would have been really hard if she was like, no, my way, no, my way, no, my way. She was just so open. And then and then working with great actors, I just learned a lot from working with them and really seeing them work. And the whole crew. So it didn't, after a certain, after the first week or so, I stopped being intimidated by the fact that I was working on someone else's script and tried to just like feel like it was ours. We were doing it together. And that's the beauty of great collaborators, is that you're not alone, yeah.
I want to ask something. So the film, it's about a lot of things, obviously, but sort of the creative process is like central to everything. And you tackle this kind of impossible cinematic problem of sort of depicting a writer writing and struggling.
Yeah.
It's like this inherently kind of uncinematic act, or it has been. I feel like I've tried and failed to do that.
Yes, so true. Oh my God, so true.
Your approach to like, because I think it's done successfully. Can you talk about like how you approach like writing and writer's block for those scenes, and like can you just speak on that a little bit?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think Sarah, I remember in one of our Q&As, she was saying, she's like, I didn't want there to be any scenes of Shirley writing. And I was like, and then of course, when we got into the editing, we were like, we really need Shirley writing. And we had grabbed, thankfully, there weren't that many written into the actual script, but we had grabbed a few scenes of her writing just like off the cuff, like when we were kind of like waiting for another setup. And yeah, I think in a weird way. So it's interesting. Like I had this happen on Madeline's Madeline too, that sometimes it's when something is so inherent to the way that you're thinking about a script, you don't put it into the script. And I think in a weird way, the writing was so inherent to the concept for Sarah that actually the process of writing wasn't so much on the page. So when we got into the edit, we realized that the end of the movie really hinged on understanding how the writing had been going throughout, but we didn't have any cues, not that many cues for like how the writing, there were just like some hints here and there, but it wasn't something that was like dramatized necessarily. So our editor, David Barker, had this idea to include the voiceover, the sound of Shirley writing and hearing those sections. And I felt like, and then Sarah was super excited by that and ended up writing these beautiful passages that are sort of her idea of Shirley Jackson's first drafts of these different sections. And so, and I think that really brought it to life, because once we could hear her writing process throughout, not only were we more invested at the end and like, how is the book? What does Stanley think of the book? Like, where's the book at? But we could hear when she's stuck, when she's frustrated. And then we could also hear and feel in her performance, like when she's inspired. And also, so it's like, how is she in relationship to the book, but also how is she in relationship to Rose, and how Rose is transforming her ideas of Paula, her main character in her book. Yeah, it was an exciting discovery. And a lot of it did happen in the edit. Because you always have to, like, when you get to the end of your movie, you're like, okay, that happens. We have to figure out how to make that pay off. And I think my God, I mean, Elizabeth Moss's performance at the end of our film is she just did such a stunning job. She's such a great performer. And so I was so lost on how to shoot the end of the movie. And I was like, I don't know what to do. Like, this is the climax. This is the end. And then we were like, well, we'll start with Lizzie's close-up. We know we need that. And then we'll go from there. And we, sat the camera down, did the close-up. And I just remember watching it and being like, crying and just thanking God for such great, such a great actress. I mean, she just had what incredible instincts, and so much happens that said the whole movie. So it was really exciting. It was exciting to just like be like, oh yeah, you don't need to paint on this one. She's doing all the painting,
We have a few more from the viewing public.
Oh, great.
So a question from Kaylin. Other than source material, did you draw from other artists or writers when sculpting the film? So I guess that influences.
Yeah. Biggest influence obviously was Shirley herself. Like Hangs a Man Up, the actual book. I think in my Yeah, she was such a big influence. Honestly, it's hard for me to think of any other. Did you say writers, or what was the other thing? She said writers
or writers.
Artists or writers.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, definitely. Shirley has so much writing and there's such a diverse array of writing that was the biggest influence. I tried to get a little bit into her influences, which were like more musical. But then the painting, I actually had gone to this MoMA exhibit, female post-war abstractionists, and so it was all female painters working at the time that Shirley would have been writing this. So it was 1948, and that our film was set in. And so these painters were all doing these really beautiful abstract kind of like, there were these painters and also photographers that were working in a kind of very fluid, abstract energy. It was such a beautiful exhibit. And I remember putting a bunch of those images in my pitch packet for the piece. Also, Sally Mann's photographs, I think, were a big influence. Oh, shoot, what is her name? Oh, there's another terrific Florence photographer. I'm like, can I figure out her name? I'm like, she's a famous bathtub photo. Oh my God, I don't know. I'll have to find a female photographer bathtub. I don't know. That's not gonna. It's like a super famous. Oh, I don't know. I'm never gonna. But yeah, there were a few great. Actually, hold on, I'm missing who else? Cindy Sherman. Cindy Sherman was a big one that we had. I had a ton of her work in my pitch packet, and we were looking at stuff like Hitchcock in terms of filmmakers, like Hitchcock and Three Women by Robert Altman and Rosemary's Baby. But weirdly, I think I had been working with Ashley Connor in my first two films, and then discovered Andrea Arnold's like really visceral style, and I think I just adore Andrea Arnold so much. But sometimes, yeah, the artists that you kind of get the most from are the collaborators that you're working with too, because they have such terrific instincts as well. So, but those are a few of them. Yeah, those are there were some exciting voices. I mean, it's fun. It was fun to explore some of the art at that time and try to be inspired by that. Yeah, and it was fun to watch Rebecca. We rewatched Rebecca right before we started shooting the Hitchcock film, and I think that came out right around when our film was set. I'm trying to remember. I can't remember the exact date, but so it was fun to think like, oh, Shirley probably saw this movie, and I don't know. It was fun to sort of live in that world, but then obviously we wanted to make a film that didn't feel stuck in period. Like, didn't feel like it made sense to set a film in 1948 and shoot it in a 1948 way, because then why wouldn't why are we in 2020? So yeah.
You mentioned that you looked a bit into the music that Shirley listened to and was influenced by. We actually have a question from Vivian about the music. It says the music added to the overall intensity of the film, from the ominous background music to the song selections of Stanley and Fred. Can you discuss those music choices?
Yeah, so Stanley was a huge blues fan, and he loved. Yeah, so he was listening to that and kind of teaching a lot of that more like folk music in his class, and this is in real life, and so we kind of let that filter into the film, and also it's in Shirley the book, the novel, and then when we were looking for a composer, it was exciting to have. We really wanted to. Well, so when we were choosing this, when we shot the film, I really wanted the female voice, and so we were to be a big part of it. And so we were listening to a lot more like female blues singers, not just like male blues singers, but looking at female blues singers of the period to be the blues that got played in that house. And then we had great music supervisors too, Bruce and Lauren, and I can't remember their last names right now, but they're terrific. And they did such a great job pulling all this music together. And then it was so exciting to find Tamar Kali, who was our composer. And I think she had an energy that felt like so such a kind of like meld between all of the worlds that we were kind of going between. Like she has kind of some punk background, and she's scored a lot of Dee Reese's films, and she'd scored Mudbound. And she has a classical background too, so she was able to kind of navigate all the worlds that were kind of either or very overtly or subtly alluded to in our movie, and so I feel like she brought such exciting rhythm and energy and kind of spirit, and her voice. Oh my God, she has such a beautiful voice, and so we really had fun like having her kind of go wild in the music sections. And especially the dreamy stuff. By the way, I'm hearing your microphone knocking a lot. I don't know if you're maybe hitting it or something. But we were, I remember when we were doing like the bathtub dream sequence, she did a first draft and I was like, this is amazing. I was like, go even further, like just like go like let loose. And she was like, she's like wailing in the soundtrack. And I thought, and the same with the ending, she did so much beautiful work there. It was just exciting to let her kind of follow her instincts. And she was a great collaborator and so open to input and really, very collaborative.
Yeah. We have time for a couple more. We have a question this is from a question about filmmaking from Despina, and that's just sort of a general question. Do you have any advice for a first-time director? And then more specifically, also, do you have any advice about trying to secure funding for their first feature film?
Oh, yeah. Now, it's so funny because there's all these prizes for your first feature. If you have a great first feature, there's all these prizes. But I think it's really dangerous to put a lot of pressure on your first feature. And I think first anything, that it's so much more important to make than to not make. It's like thinking gets you nowhere. It's doing that really moves you forward. So if you can make a project, make the movie. Make whatever movie you can make at whatever budget level you have. And usually sometimes fighting against low budgets can make such exciting, beautiful projects. And there's so many creative answers that have come out of not having enough money to do. Like if you want to make a fantasy movie and you need $30 million, like how interesting to try to make it for $150,000 or $10,000, who knows? And then, just kind of like letting yourself be creative with your budget. It's actually restrictions, I think, can be a gift. It's also sometimes really hard. They're hard. Budgetary restrictions are super hard. It's hard that our art is one of the only arts that is so tied to money and to be able to make it. But I would just say try to make it however you possibly can. And there was another part of that question. What was the other part of the question?
Just like general advice for first time.
That was my general advice. What was the next one? And
then like advice about trying to secure funding was the second.
Oh, to secure funding. I did Kickstarters back in the day. I know a lot of people who did a lot of credit card debt. I think, one of the things now that I'm further along in my career is finding a great producer. Like when you have a great seasoned producer on board, they will really help you get funding for your project. And I worked with Killer Films on this, and they're just like really known for helping like get young filmmakers money, and opportunities. And I think that's why they're so famous. Christine Vachon and David Hinojosa were like such incredible partners. I mean, we had such great producing partners all around, but the funding thing, it is really hard. And it does help to get into these programs. I know that Sundance has the Catalyst, there's different labs. But I think it actually honestly really helps. The best way to get funding, I think, is like talk to people who you think, whether or not it's actual like producers or financiers, people who you think would connect with your material, or other filmmakers, even maybe somebody who's made a few films and who's if you have someone whose work you really love that maybe has something in common with the work that you're making, if you want to reach out to them and just ask them to have a general phone call with you. I actually just had a phone call today with a really awesome filmmaker who's trying to make her first feature, and she's doing experimental work, and she's like, how on earth did you get funding? And so we talked about the places that, you know, that like the kind of work that I'm doing, and that might be also interested in the kind of work that she's doing, because we have a similar vibe to our projects. So if there's an artist that you really love, I think reaching out to them and just saying like, can I get your advice? They might know some avenues or some people who would really connect with your project. And the most important thing, I think, always before getting so caught up in the funding is to really put your heart into the project. Tell the most personal story you possibly can, make it yours, be vulnerable. And I think when what you put on the page, if you're really honest and authentic, people will respond to it and they will want to work on it with you, and you'll find your partners. And so it's really, yeah. But of course, there are also many barriers to entry. So, you know, there's also CineReach in New York. So finding the right nonprofit can be a way to, yeah.
I think that's all good advice. We'll end on what I think is kind of a fun one. This is a question from Davey. Was your portrayal of Jackson practicing witchcraft inspired by research, or was that fictionalized? So I'm assuming that means the tarot reading and the nettle under the bed.
Oh yeah. Gosh, I guess all of that was from Sarah's script, and I mean, I don't know that we have a ton of, I'm trying to remember what I read in the biography about the original, like Shirley's, I think, you know, the thing I mainly remember from the biography is how Stanley was so frustrated that everyone was like, oh, that, you know, when Shirley passed away, she was like known as this like witchy author. And he was like, she was so much more. That was not like her main thing. That was like one aspect of like this well-rounded person. But we did have, in terms of our shooting it, we did have a tarot. We had a witch give us some lessons about tarot and like how to, like, it was very funny. We had like a tarot specialist come in. It wasn't sort of meant, she was on the art department. She just knew everything about tarot cards. Yeah. And then the nettles under the bed. I don't know where that came from, actually. I'd have to ask Sarah. That's, what her inspiration was for that. But I think we were all really excited, and we kept saying like Shirley was blessing the movie, and her spirit was kind of like hovering over the house, watching us and making sure that we stayed on our toes. Yeah. Sending her ghosts around. Yeah.
Bumping the set, maybe in a good way though.
Yeah.
Well, Josephine, I'd like to thank you again for being here. And
thank you.
Tonight. Thank you to everyone who tuned in. Shirley is available all over the place, right? Or just on Amazon, right?
It's on Amazon, iTunes, Hulu, and pretty much anything where you can pay for a movie. I think it's there. Yeah, just look for it.
Great. Well, thank you again for being here, and good luck with the rest of your quarantine.
Oh, thank you so much, and thanks for being patient with me. And also, I wish I could see your face. I'm slowly now going to start.
Did you end up finding me in the stacks?
I never found you. I'm going to start closing some things, and I'm hoping I'll find you once these get closed. I'm like, can I find you ever? Hold on, let's see. I think you're in. The craziest part is that I'm like, I feel like you're in my Chrome, but I'm like running out of Chrome windows. I'm like, where could you possibly be at? I love that I'm down to the last two. Oh, okay. Yep, there you are. Oh my God. It only took like the entire time to find you. I was like closing windows. Yep. Oh, well.
Well, now that we can see each other, we can say goodbye.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Sam. Thank you to you. And thank you to everyone for listening. And this was so nice and really great chance to share with all of you. So thanks for watching. Thank you.
Bye.
All right. Bye.